I finished my first week of intensive English learning. Today I will share with you my conclusions. At the beginning, it would be useful to define the term intensive learning because I have a special definition for this. Intensive learning means for me at least 2 hours a day. During the week, it is 20 hours, then 6 times a week. It is my definition of intensive learning. First conclusion. Intensive learning gave me a lot of satisfaction. You see, when I was learning intensively English throughout this week, I've noticed that it worked pretty well because I could actually feel like it could be a part of my day. This experience was so pleasant and it's hard to explain with words, but I was proud of myself. I've done this work, even if it was challenging sometimes. I was able to do the thing that I wanted. The next point that I would like to discuss is my copywriting method that I was telling you that I was struggling with an issue. I had no idea about how to do this exercise and I often did something else. I was basically confused. I felt like I found a solution to this problem because I was saying that I had 2 possibilities to solve this. I kept going the same way. I tried to convey an author's thought in a different way. It was my approach. I solved this specific issue. I'm curious about how it's gonna work because I was wondering whether it's good or not, and I had so many conclusions whether I should do something else, but I felt like I've decided to test it out and I believed in this method, so I'm gonna try it in the end of the learning English because let's be honest, this activity in plan was gonna take 30 hours of my learning. The reason behind it was simple. I wanted to focus on my writing. Writing is one of the most important parts when it comes to my language learning process. I've been using a new approach for this week and I am glad about it, how it works. Finally, I noticed that I started use more automatically some grammatical structures. For example, a second conditional or even as if and wish, I could, something like that. I felt like these lessons weren't pointless and everything had its goal. Basically, I am proud of myself that I've adjusted this change because I've noticed that my grammatical lessons are more engaging. I developed this topic more deeper in this video, my English learning update May 2026. So I do recommend to see if you wanna know something more about it. Another conclusion that is important for learning is when you increase your volume, you do it stepwisely because it's easier to adjust. It is the point that I wanna say I am doing it because it was my plan to learn English intensively. This week I'm gonna learn 3 hours a day, 6 times. So you cannot start with the level that you expect because sometimes something can be wrong and maybe you would like to learn 4 hours a day, but you only learned an hour a day, and it is a problem because I feel like after 1 week or 2 weeks your brain will acknowledge it as too difficult and you will probably give up. It is a problem. I remember when I wanted to learn intensively, I didn't study so much. Maybe it was one and a half, but I wanted to start learning 3 hours a day, and I had a plan to learn it for a longer period of time. I've pre-planned it for 45 days or something like that. I don't remember exact numbers, but I wanted to do something intensively and I wanted to learn 3 hours a day, and it was probably 6 times a week. What has been turned out? Finally, I've kept it for 3 weeks. Then I've given up completely because it seemed to be too difficult. I struggle with it a lot and I had to force myself to do the thing that I wanted to do, because to be honest, I wasn't able to organize my time this way and I felt like I was completely immature in this time. So unfortunately it was something challenging. But I wanna challenge a certain assumption that people can have. I know that we can learn 3-4 hours a day. Yes, you can do it, why not? But you should know about it that you can struggle with the adjustment shock, and to be honest, I experienced it and I don't recommend to do it because you can hate your passion. What you can do instead, when you know how to properly increase your time, you need to find your time base. It is all about this. I decided to adjust my schedule for this, that first week it is 2 hours and a half, second week is 3 hours, third week is 3 hours and a half, and fourth week is 4 hours a day. And what we have here is something like increasing changes. When we just do it stepwisely, we don't increase it in huge amounts. Instead, I prefer another approach. I feel like it is something what can help me, and I feel like it's more sustainable and I'm gonna keep it long termly. When it comes to it, I have no idea whether I'm gonna learn a lot this way for longer period of the time, but definitely it is something what I would like to do in the future, and maybe not in English. It is my conclusion when it comes to it. I have one important conclusion related to vocabulary. I feel like vocabulary is not necessary as it seems when we think about high levels of English than B2, C1 or something like that you don't have to absorb as much vocabulary. But I can see something like I learned a lot of pointless words that are sometimes too advanced. For example, inconclusive, truculent, or state. And this is something what prevails in my learning. It is an issue, I felt like, but I could focus on more useful words. Something didn't work because I was complaining about this I was completely frustrated that I needed to do it because sometimes I had no idea about words and I struggled with it a lot. It was my challenge. What I understood is the fact that there is a thing that should be improved, because when I am frustrated, it means that something doesn't work. I've been doing the thing wrong and it is a problem. I didn't pay close attention to how I create the sentences, and it could be an underlying why it happened. So it could be a reason. I'm gonna test it out whether it's gonna work or not. I wanna get the chance for Anki, but I started noticing it is not worth learning a list of words on C1, C2 because it doesn't get what I expected. This is a downside of learning advanced vocab. But let's be honest, sometimes we need to learn some vocabulary if we wanna increase our passive skills. I'm gonna keep doing the same because I don't have enough data and I need more data, and maybe I can say something about it for 2 months. It can be better. It's gonna be fixed in my future, but when it comes to vocab, it is not my priority, as I said, so I'm doing it this way. That's why. Let's move on to the next point. When activities matter because you can guess what actually may make your language more pleasant. I noticed I tend to do better things that I like than things I prefer not doing it in huge amounts. Then when it comes to things that I just prefer to do are speaking, vocab and grammar. It is my favorite part of this process of learning, but they are things that aren't pleasant, like copywriting and writing essays. I don't hate it, but it isn't my favorite activities that I'm undertaking. So here is the reason. What was my purpose of doing these activities? My purpose behind was really simple. I wanted to improve my writing. So what I needed to do is writing, and I've been searching really simple methods that I could use, and I found these methods that could work. That's why I've chosen those. Yes, sometimes you can complain about what you are doing, but sometimes you need to embrace the pain of doing the thing that you don't like. If we did everything what we wanna, we would end up horribly. Let's move on to my personal conclusion, because unfortunately during this week I've understood myself better when it comes to certain needs. Has shown me a huge disadvantage in my learning, that sometimes I take too long breaks during learning, that I can do a 2.5 study session can take me even 6 hours. I can be distracted by my telephone or something like that, by I usually go to eat something, so it is a problem, but I have an idea to go for a walk, so sometimes it can be challenging to question this thing, but at the end of the day I'm gonna eliminate my distractions and I'm gonna do it with one huge block with small breaks, but it is necessary. Because could you imagine a person who can learn 3 hours without any break. I cannot imagine. But when it comes to my plan, I have many activities that I need to switch because sometimes I need to add something and change. So it usually takes more time. And my solution for this is to do a long study session with small break. It's gonna take 3 hours and a half instead of 6 hours if I wanted to do this study session, but it would happen in this way. But let's be honest, but when I'm gonna study 4 hours a day, this is gonna help me more actually than you can think. That's why I need to change this thing. The last conclusion that I conclude is the fact that I should change something during the process of learning. Because let's be honest, we are not able to predict all of outcomes that are gonna happen and what is not gonna work, because it's impossible to see when you don't have any experience, and when you prepared everything and it worked, it often means that you've done something wrong. And it is the reason we can notice so many difficulties on the path. I've noticed in myself that when I learn a lot, it's easier to notice my issues in language learning, what can improve, what could be better. It seems to be easier, but I feel like when you see downsides of the thing, it is a sign of thriving and improvement. From my perspective, I view that changes are necessary to implement because there is always something to improve. We are human beings, so we are naturally imperfect, and it's a good reason to notice that we can optimize many things, but it is a good thing that you can develop yourself to the end of your life. That's all what I wanted to say in this video, and until to the next, guys. Bye.